If you're black, you're expected to see the world through leftist eyes. You must agree that Republicans are the enemy of the people. Allegedly, they are warmongers, sexists, racists, xenophobes that only care about the rich. This, of course, is a leftist lie that unfortunately is believed by millions of Americans. If you're black and espouse anything other than leftist dogma, then you run risk of being labeled a coon. Coon being a derogatory term used to describe a black person that betrayed their race or a black person accused of kissing up to whites by attacking other blacks. But today, coon refers to any person that dares to speak against leftist ideology. Listen to this clip from Malcolm X from his famous speech, Bullets or Ballots.
Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who'll go to the White House and who'll stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last. Because you're a chump. A political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats. Only 177 are Republicans. In the Senate, there are 67 Democrats. Only 33 are Republicans. The party that you bash controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise.
Malcolm X, who by any serious analysis would never, ever be deemed a coon. But if he said the same thing you just heard about voting, or not voting rather, for the Democratic Party, he would definitely be called a coon. Not only that, but they would use other black people to do it. Take, for example, Kanye West's Oval Office meeting with President Trump. CNN, out of all the fake news medias, was the most egregious with their racist coverage of Kanye West. They used Don Lemon and other black CNN contributors to cast dispersions on West. He was ridiculed about his sanity when they knew he did suffer from mental health issues. His behavior was also described as coonish. A black contributor even said that Kanye West was the result of when Negroes don't read. All the black correspondents, including Don Lemon, had a good laugh at Kanye's expense. The only person on the panel that took offense to that joke was the white conservative. At no time was Kanye West's point attacked. They never said nothing about what he said, that people should think for themselves and not blindly follow leftist ideology or support Democrats when they receive nothing in return. That was never attacked. They instead referenced his sanity, his lack of oratory skills, and posited that he was a token. If Kanye West is a coon for pointing out the lack of reciprocity from Democrats for the almost universal black support, then so is Malcolm X, because he said the same thing. He in fact went a step further by stating that if you vote for the Democrats, you yourself are betraying the race. It wasn't until the 60s that the Democrats started to support civil rights bills. They opposed the legislation for 100 years or so before it became politically expedient for them to do so. Lyndon B. Johnson, who referred to civil rights legislation as nigger bills, according to a memo filed by FBI agent William Bradican, seemed to have been in the Ku Klux Klan. Yet he is still celebrated for signing the Civil Rights Bill in 1964, even though he was a racist. And unlike President Trump, the accusations against LBJ is true and it was blatant. For example, speaking about appointing Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, he said, and I quote, "When I appoint a nigger to the bench, I want everyone to know he's a nigger." End quote. Another time, when his chauffeur, he asked him, "What do you rather be called, nigger, boy, or chief?" When the chauffeur said that he'd rather be called by his God-given name, the name that his mother gave him, Johnson grew angry and said, and I quote, "As long as you're black and you're going to be black till the day you die, no one's going to call you by your goddamn name. So no matter what you are called, nigger, you just let it roll off your back like water and you'll make it. Just pretend you're a goddamn piece of furniture." End quote. And still, when he was talking about civil rights bill, he said this, and I quote, "These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us, since they got something they never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we got to do something about this. We got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference." End quote. This is why Democrats introduced the Great Society, which allegedly was to end poverty, but instead destroyed the black family. As the rate of children born out of wedlock increased, so did the poverty rate, the crime rate, and the rate of incarceration and homelessness increase in the black communities. This was by design. Democrats created a new plantation where your food, shelter, and medical expenses would be subsidized by the government in exchange for your continued support of the Democratic Party. Upward mobility? Discouraged. If a family on welfare whose parents attempted to work, if they wanted to leave welfare, to get off of welfare, to be self-sufficient, that was discouraged. They would immediately be cut off of welfare and could lose all of most of their housing subsidies if they have one. There is no transitional process to ease the family into self-sufficiency. If Democrats cared, they would ensure that the benefits were lowered gradually to give the family the best chance of remaining free of welfare. Because that should be the real goal. Self-sufficiency, however, is not the goal of Democratic policies. It's poverty. They purposely make the penalty for trying to get off of welfare severe to deter people from trying to get off. So unfortunately, most families don't want to risk their Section 8 or other government benefits trying to work. And that's because the Democrats want it that way. Democrats have existed for 192 years. 137 of them years, they called you nigger to your face. For the last 55 years, they just treat you like a nigger. How are your neighborhoods that they control worse than they were under Jim Crow? Me pointing this out doesn't make me a coon, but it should make you question if you are one, if you continue to support the Democrats.